The girl who was always trying to make it big. Sevyn Streeter has been making a name for herself in the R&B world since the top of the millennium. From multiple failed girl groups to becoming a songwriter and aiming to make it big solo, it has been an uphill battle. Finding much success as a songwriter and penning hits for major stars that would go on to do wonders for their career, she even had a hit of her own, It Won't Stop, in 2013. But what happened to that solo momentum? So from trying to break the industry code to her mental health struggles, dealing with colorism.
You know, in that particular group, I would have things that I would sing, but because I was the dark-skinned Black girl, you would look at the video and they would have someone lip-syncing to my voice.
Questions about her Chris Brown support and a messy relationship with another forgotten figure. What happened to Sevyn Streeter? Now, perhaps in 2025, Sevyn Streeter's coming to our TVs in a new way. Hey guys, it's your girl Cameron and welcome back to another video. I am back with another installment to my What Happened To series, and today we're going to be talking about what happened to Sevyn Streeter. Once being prepped to possibly be the next R&B pop princess, her solo fate seemingly fell flat not long after her solo breakthrough in 2013. Her label was some delays, but also just trying to find her identity as an artist, juggling her career as a solo artist as well as a successful songwriter. And with all of the R&B girls really taking stake in the mid-2010s, a lot of new girls were really being ushered into the scene. It seems like Sevyn Streeter quickly faded into the background. She could never fully find her footing. So today we will discuss her career beginnings, her time in girl groups, journey to her solo career, scandals, and most importantly, where she is today. So comment down below, what do you guys think of Sevyn Streeter and her story? Hit that subscribe button down below. Thank you guys so much for all of the support. And without further ado, let's get right into the video. So we are going to start with her early beginnings. So Sevyn Streeter's real name is Amber Denise Streeter. Born on July 7th, 1986, another fellow Cancer queen. We love that. And she's a Florida girl from Haines City, to be exact. She grew up singing in church and in talent shows locally, exposed to music at a very, very young age. And her cousins began a little gospel group. Yes, as kids, and they had a band and she was the singer and it was this whole thing. If you grew up going to the church, there's a good chance that you and your cousins either had a little gospel group, a little praise dancing group, but that was really Sevyn's music origin story. But also similar to a lot of children trying to break out at the time, like in the late 80s and 90s, a lot of kids competed on singing competition shows. So around 1996, when Sevyn was about 10 years old, she competed on Showtime at the Apollo hosted by Steve Harvey and placed first with her entry, My Funny Valentine. Her charisma and confidence really shined on stage for such a young age.
I just remember stepping on that stage and feeling like I had to win the crowd over. From that point on, I was absolutely just in love with music.
This was like the social media equivalent of children finding stardom in the 80s and 90s. Live singing show competitions where record execs, A&Rs, and labels were viewing from the shadows. This is really how people like JoJo got recognized, Aaliyah, Jordan Sparks, Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, Lauryn Hill. Some of the biggest names were doing these types of competitions. She was still going by her name, Amber, her birth name.
Y'all show your love for Amber Streeter.
She would develop her stage name a little bit later, as the number 7 is symbolic to her.
I got my name because 7 is my birthday. My birthday is 7/7, July 7th.
Okay.
I was literally born at 7 months. And then 7 biblically means like perfection and completion.
So let's talk about her intro to the industry. Girl grouping. This is something I was not very privy to. At just around 14 years old, she was signed to her very first record deal. Yeah, being 1/4 of a group called TG4. Unfortunately put together by Chris Stokes and represented by TUG, or the Ultimate Group Entertainment, and Stokes would serve as their manager. Chris Stokes, at the time was quite reputable, finding and representing talent like B2K, Jhené Aiko, Omarion, Marcus Houston, NLT. He essentially harbored like R&B Y2K culture for the youth, for teenagers at this time. And this was just another project and attempt at capitalizing on the group craze of the early 2000s. So TG4, or Tom Girls 4, which is essentially a flip on the tomboy term, they were named this with the girls saying, quote,
well, basically, we dress like boys, we dance like boys.
You don't look like boys, I'm gonna tell you that right now.
I'm not really feeling the name, but that's besides the point. It was a quartet made of Keisha Henry, Davida Williams, Ashley Gallo, and of course, Sevyn Streeter, or Ambi, in the group. They formed in 2001, and she was actually offered the very first spot in the group after she opened for a B2K concert in Orlando, Florida. Again, she was making a local name for herself. My assumption is they needed somebody to open the show. They got a local artist, and that was Sevyn.
Well, actually, I was singing solo before this, and I opened for B2K and IMX in Florida. That's where I'm from.
Okay.
And I met Chris Stokes backstage, and he was telling me about this girls group that he wanted to start and asked me if I wanted to join. I was like, of course.
And I saw that B2K was performing at the local performing arts high school, and I got the number to the principal of the school that they were performing at. And so I got to open for B2K and met their manager backstage. Maybe 2 weeks later, they flew me and my mom to LA and put me right into a group with 3 other girls.
Now, the group's only major single and first single was, wait for it, Virginity. Yes, a teenage group with their very first single being titled Virginity. Now, before you raise your pitchforks, put them down, or lower them just a little bit. It was kind of like an abstinence anthem. But. As much as you could say it was good representation, for those of you guys who were there at the time, you may feel very differently about this. However, I would argue that it is a little weird. A teenage girl group, their first Virginity, naming it that title very specifically, they knew what they were doing, and you cannot convince me otherwise. Sevyn also years later would co-sign this, saying that it wasn't a great song and was kind of odd.
When I look back on it, she's like, oh my God, I really sang that song, but I didn't write it, obviously.
But yeah, the song did peak at number 88 on the US Billboard R&B chart back in 2002, but it overall was not a commercial success. It didn't stick. They not only parted ways with their label, but their album, what was supposed to be their debut album, Time for the New, was shelved indefinitely, never came out. So they weren't able to fully take off. While also one girl, Davida, parted from the group, so the 3 remaining changed the name to Tom Girls Forever. And they also signed to another label called Soul Chemistry, kind of trying to see if they can rev up the engine again, but ultimately they succumbed to their fate and they finally disbanded in 2004. Now, although the group didn't go much of anywhere, they were very much intertwined with the teen scene, the black teen scene of the early 2000s. They were able to open at the Scream 2 tour with Bow Wow and B2K. They've also made cameos in music videos, a cameo in the B2K video with Jhené Aiko, one of their most popular songs actually. And this really afforded Sevyn industry connections and put her in these new major rooms. I'm sure this was her very first lesson in the shiftiness and the fickleness of labels in the industry. That's a hard lesson to learn at such a young age. Now, after all of this, when they disbanded, she was around 18 years old now. So she took another swing at a girl group, being discovered by Rich Harrison, who's a well-known producer and songwriter who has worked with the likes of Mary J. Blige, A. Marie, Beyonce, and Usher, just to name a few. Remember, this was a new age and era. She was discovered by Rich Harrison via her MySpace page, and she was signed to his label, Richcraft, as Sevyn, so S-E-7-E-N.
And I changed my name in 2007 because I just felt like every single thing that I prayed for, God gave me, and I felt spiritually completed.
Interesting spelling. I'm glad she changed it. It's giving black, 6 black. But she signed a deal with Jive Records as well in 2007 as a member of Rich's new girl group, Rich Girl. The rich, perhaps a little self-absorbed, it is what it is. It was another 4-member girl group, another quartet with Audra Simmons, Christina Williams, Lindriette Smith, who was also known as Crystal in the group June's Diary. I know a lot of you guys want me to do a video on them. I will get there. Signed to Richcraft and RCA Records. So it was a pop, R&B, hip-hop girl group. They never released a debut album, although they had been working on one since 2009. They did have a debut EP. Technically 2 official singles that were like somewhat unsuccessful charting. It didn't really stick. I don't personally remember this group. Comment down below if you remember Rich Girl. Kind of sounded like a Danity Kane knockoff. Like, it was just like Danity Kane, Destiny's Child-esque. There was nothing, in my opinion, super unique musically about the group.
First, let me tell you how I feel, cause yeah, it's official and yeah, it's all real and yeah, he my man and yo.
But they did have a single featuring Rick Ross and Fabulous, and they did get to work with Usher and feature on a Chris Brown song. They would even make it as far as releasing a mixtape called Fallen in Love with a Rich Girl on Valentine's Day in 2011. However, they shortly disbanded after that. Nevertheless, another great learning lesson for Sevyn. With her first experience in starting to songwrite and vocal produce and really learn how to harmonize and work together and work with a group and learning about music production.
While you're learning how to blend with different voices, it's kind of teaching you which harmonies go together. So it's like fun, you know, it's a lot. Yeah.
And you're in 2.
I was in 2. The first one couldn't sing that well though, but the second one was fire.
And even opened up for Beyonce on her I Am tour in June 2009. So that's a pretty big deal. They were well connected, but an interesting connection to Jordin Sparks' story. I connected these dots quite quickly. They were also signed to Jive Records, just like Jordin Sparks. And if you remember, RCA decided to dissolve and disband Jive Records maybe around 2011. And so this made a lot of their artists automatically shift over to RCA, but they didn't have like set A&Rs. They weren't worked into the budget. And this ultimately affected their careers. It literally stalled Jordin Sparks' career single-handedly. And I'm assuming that Rich Girl, already not having that much momentum, was not made a priority and either dropped or decided to leave. So the group disbanded in 2011, but Sevyn officially confirmed that news in a statement following her solo release of a song called Red Handed. She also announced that she had been signed to Chris Brown's CBE imprint. This is that Chris connection. Remember, this was also after the Rihanna incident in 2009. And I know this for a fact, honestly. I don't wonder. His capital was not as high, right, in making industry connections. So let's just say it was absolutely a risk to be signed to his imprint. Like, you didn't really know which way it was going to go. So we will talk about that a little bit later because that is very relevant to the story. But I really want to delve into how she started her solo career and her takeoff. So remember, at this point, Sevyn had been working for almost a decade in the industry. Now, this was around the time that she removed the actual number 7 from her name and just decided to go by Sevyn, so Sevyn. And this spelling change was revealed on the track list when she featured on Chris Brown's 2012 album Fortune, and she'd officially go by Sevyn Streeter from this point forward. Now, her relationship with Chris Brown in a lot of ways really helped her gain songwriting experience.
Well, the way that I met Chris, we had the same manager. Tina Davis managed Rich Girl, and then she also managed Chris Brown. And funny story, I remember one day we were working across the hall from Chris, and I was like, hey, you know, if you're writing, can I come write? Yeah. And he was like, yeah, I'm gonna come get you. That first night, I think we wrote a record called Smile and Wave, me, him, and Kevin McCall, and that's just how our writing and our professional relationship began.
Through his imprint, he really helped push her solo career. But years of hard work finally began paying off when she was signed to Atlantic Records and also landed a songwriting publishing deal with Sony. So she released her first official commercial single, I Like It, which premiered on 106 & Park on January 4th, 2013. And then her biggest career hit was actually her second single, It Won't Stop. And it won't stop. Which released in June 2013. Now, the song reached number 30 on the Billboard Hot 100, so yes, her first and only top 40 hit, and it also peaked at number 4 on the US R&B Billboard chart. I believe it also went number 1 on another chart. I will make sure I verify that. But it was certified platinum as well. And in August 2013, the song would go on to have a remix that featured Chris Brown himself. And from my memory, this is when it really took off for her, right? The song took off. They released a music video on 106 in Park in October 2013. And if you were an R&B listener at this time, maybe even if you weren't, I'm not sure, but if you were, this song was huge. It was everywhere. It was clean. It was fresh, smooth, calm vocals, a nice deep bass. It felt very current, right? It felt like the now. And the video today has a whopping 343 million views. So yes, it was a hit, and this was a big look for Sevyn. She also released her debut EP, Call Me Crazy But, through Atlantic Records in December 2013, which debuted at number 5 on the Billboard R&B Hip Hop Albums chart. And then her second single from that album, Call Me Crazy, released in April 2013, with her third single being X on the Ceiling. Mind you, she continued to release singles, with her fourth solo single being Next in November 2013. One version featured Kid Ink and the other version featured YG. She was also really on a roll trying to keep this momentum going, so constant singles. And in 2015, we're going to fast forward about a year, she kicked off her next era with a promo single called Don't Kill the Fun featuring Chris Brown. Now, the production here, this is a very unique track. I don't know how to describe it fully, so definitely go check out the full song. But it felt very innovative and vibrant, and I think Sevyn particularly shines here. She also snagged a song on the Furious 7 soundtrack called How Bad Do You Want It, which released March 2015. And finally, in July 2015, she also released her second EP, Should Have Been There Part 1. Now, this is where I was really tapped in with Sevyn at the time. So with songs like Consistent, that's a banger, a bop, Don't Kill the Fun, and its title track, Should Have Been There, featuring B.O.B., we'll talk about him more later, feeding the general public with 13 tracks on an EP is what I personally like to hear, and it debuted at number 15 on the US Top R&B Albums chart. So Sevyn was at least in the conversation, right? She was known throughout the industry. She was starting to kind of break that general public bubble. But a lot of the R&B girls were really starting to really take off at this time. So I'm sure she was kind of concerned with how will I fit in, right? How will I stay fresh? Because mind you, not that Sevyn was old by any means, but she was around 29 when things in her solo career started to really mount. Yeah, and we know that the industry is what they consider a young game. And I know people are starting to really break that stigma now. But as women, there is always this fighting of the clock. And I could imagine kind of reading between the lines. How do I fit into this ecosystem, this landscape? I've been around since the early 2000s, and I need to figure out a way to really reinvent myself. Someone who did really great at this was Jhené Aiko. Jhené Aiko had her career in the early 2000s around the B2K era. As we talked about, she was signed to the same exact label as Sevyn, and she went back to the drawing board and really came out and made a name for herself as an R&B starlet in the early 2010s, mid 2010s. So I think Sevyn was trying to figure out that limbo as well. So when Sevyn turned 30, this is when she said her mental health really declined. Okay, pressure was mounting, and I do want to add a trigger warning. If you would like to skip this portion, we do talk about very sensitive topics regarding depression, mental health. She suffered from depression for about a year and a half around this time. Something that her fans had no clue about. She kept it very under wraps. While she also had a lot of personal things happening in her life with her family.
You want to feel like you're getting out what you put in. So that was a trigger for me. Another thing that was a trigger for me is, I'll be all the way transparent. I have a sister who was my sister for 30 years. And we found out, last Christmas that we don't have the same father too. And out to my parents because, we're all victims. And at the end of the day, her mother actually knew for 30 years and never said anything to us. So that was a trigger. And that was really, really tough to deal with. Then I lost a friend. One of my friends from childhood got last year. So that was a trigger. Yeah. And then I had people that I was working with that I just felt like I had to walk on eggshells around them. That it was a really weird kind of...
It was hard for her to bear, but she was still doing interviews. She was still out and about. She was still hustling, pushing her career. And in a Vibe Vixen interview, she says candidly, quote, "A lot of my depression was triggered by the fact that I've given my life to music. And it's in a good place, but it's not exactly where I want it to be. I sacrificed a lot of my childhood for music. I sacrificed a lot of my love life for music. I looked up and I'm like, I'm 30. What do I have to show for all of the things that I sacrificed?" And I think that that is something so brave and so candid that she shared. I want to iterate that. A lot of artists, a lot of creatives don't talk about it. The ones that make it or are trying to make it, it is lonely, it is scary because you are not sure if you're going to make it. Nobody's path looks the same. It's not like climbing the corporate ladder and having a roadmap laid out for you. Granted, nothing in life is guaranteed, right? But the thing about a creative path is you could put your whole everything and being into it and never reap success, never reap the benefits. And in Sevyn's case, that was not the case for her, right? She was still in, I would say, a really good position. But when you've been doing it this long and you signed at 14, baby, I want to be at Beyonce's level. I want to be at Rihanna's level now, and I'm not at that. And I could imagine how discouraging that is. One point where she said she did not want to be here anymore. So I really, my heart goes out to her. There's a lot of silent battles that you don't know that people are fighting. So I want to be very sensitive to that fact. So let's talk about forging forward. Now, amidst a lot of these challenges that she did not share at the time, she did forge forward in her solo career. In August 2016, she released what was supposed to be the single for her upcoming debut album, called Probably, featuring Gucci Mane. However, they kind of scrapped that. Again, the debut album still wasn't out. It was getting pushed back. It was said it was going to come, so they didn't really know exactly what they were doing. So the official single would follow in September, called My Love for You. Another single, D4L, featuring The Dream, was released in October, and she was keeping the fans fed. That's one thing about Sevyn. If she's not going to drop a project, she's dropping a single. Or was it perhaps her label overdoing the singles pre-album? Maybe waiting for something to stick, like a "it won't stop again." Pull that trigger moment. Like, okay, we have the general public, they're invested, pull the trigger. And she couldn't quite find that moment. Then she released the fourth single for this era, Before I Do, in December 2016, which is my favorite song by Sevyn Streeter. Favorite, hands down, top to bottom. It's kind of this older school, I almost wanted to say 70s-esque, but also 2000s. It gives kind of a Leah vibe. Sevyn has these very serene, seductive, but sultry vocals. Her tone was gorgeous here. It deviated from the heavily hip-hop, bass-infused tracks that were very popular at the time and that she frequented very often. Fans were very antsy for the album, however. As much as she was feeding people, where's the album? So then she'd end up pushing it to spring, although people were quick to blame Atlantic a lot. Atlantic. But Sevyn would clarify that it was her choice to push this album back.
Atlantic just decided to now say, hey, you know what, Sevyn, put an album out.
You know what? It wasn't Atlantic. It was me.
Okay.
I didn't feel like my album was completed yet. It was very, very, very important for me to tell all of my truth on this album. It was very important.
So yes, y'all, we are in 2017 now. She debuted as a solo artist in 2013. I want you to also put into perspective that she was in 2 girl groups that never were able to release albums. So out of her entire career thus far in the industry, she has never released an album. So for the upcoming album, she did embark on a tour called Girl Disrupted that began in January 2017 and finished in February of that same year. And this was essentially to promote the album release, right? To create awareness. And although she did say in that previous quote that Atlantic had nothing to do with it and that it was mostly her, I don't think the delay was timely. I think somebody should have been really pushing that sooner. Her momentum had really begun slowing down at this point, but because she was constantly trying to maybe prove to her label her scalability and value as a solo artist. And there's a fine line between okay, I want this to be quality, I want to take my time, but then there's a fine line between we also have to strike while the iron is hot, and I don't think they found the best balance between that. So finally, guys, her debut studio album, Girl Disrupted, released July 7th, 2017. Yes, July 7th, her birthday, which charted at number 92 on the Billboard Hot 200 albums chart. The title of the album is actually in reference or homage to the 1999 film Girl Interrupted, right? Her saying that it was really this comparison or metaphor or reimagination of this crazy industry.
And I was watching it one day and I was like noticing like similarities. And I was like, well, here's this girl who is going into this, this crazy, insane asylum with all these really different, like peculiar, interesting characters. I was like, oh, that kind of feels like the music industry a little bit.
And this is just a peek behind the curtain of how much she has probably really been through behind the scenes. She'd go on to release a single, Yearnin', in 2018, which was a sample of the Gap Band's 80s song, Yearning for Your Love. That's a classic. But overall, I will say this. I think a few things did hold her back. Sometimes the industry, sometimes in show business, some people merely get luckier than others. And I would still like to say that I think Sevyn has had a lot of good placement. I think she's had a lot of luck. I don't want to interpret her story thus far as a failure. Because mind you, she was still writing music. But sometimes you're just maybe not meant to be there. And that doesn't mean you're not successful, but you just might not see success in that specific way. Also, although she had really capitalized on the trap R&B sound, I really think that she should have based her brand more on a sultry R&B vibe. Yeah, like her old-timey songs are my favorite. Her old school kind of feeling tracks feel modern, but they feel nostalgic. Almost, I think she could have benefited similar to like a Victoria Monet situation, the route that she went. Instead of me trying to reinvent the wheel and create something super new, because a lot of R&B fans have been craving people to really go back to those fundamental roots. There's space for that. I think she could have thrived in that like old modern space. So I think that was also a bit of a missed opportunity. A lot of people have also theorized colorism being a major reason for this. For those of you guys who may not know, colorism is essentially idea rooted in racism. So again, it's a very real thing that exists in multiple industries that affects not just Black people, by the way, but a multitude of cultures. But it definitely comes to play in the industry. And this is something that Sevyn has been very candid about, that being a brown-skinned, dark-skinned girl in the industry since she was 14 has been the biggest uphill battle.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying this since I was 15 years old, that colorism, it does exist, within this industry. I talk about it all the time. I've dealt with it in plenty of groups that I was in before. Like, I knew that I was capable of writing or singing or dancing just as well as the next person, but not given the same opportunities because of the color of my skin. And they've just felt like that, someone who looked a different way could sell something better.
And in spite of that, she is still forged forward. She has still figured out a way to make the industry work for herself and has found success. But this is something that I do not think can be fully ignored. I don't think it can be ignored. Some of y'all might say, no. Yes.
It was also my first time being aware of colorism in our industry, because, in that particular group, I would have things that I would sing, but because I was the dark-skinned Black girl, you would look at the video and they would have someone lip singing to my voice because they couldn't carry or do the thing that the song required you to do. But I didn't look the part. So they were like, okay, yeah, you're going to sing this.
It is a very real thing, and I do not doubt that she has experienced this and that this has had a play. And also, I think her songwriting, a blessing, huge blessing, but perhaps is she a better songwriter than a singer? Some of the songs that she has done for herself, would they have arguably been better on someone else? Does she maybe have like a demo voice? A lot of songwriters record demos and then they give it to someone else, and that person has a zhuzh to it that maybe the writer who is a singer just can't quite capture in the same way. And I think that aspect of her career might have slightly overshadowed some of her other work. Like she was also never able to fully build a solid fan base that would carry her as a singer, a solo artist alone. You know what they say, each job is crucial, and not everybody can do both equally as effective. So let's talk about Sevyn the Songwriter. You guys knew I was going to get to this. I purposely wanted to make this its own section to give it the due diligence that it deserves. Somewhat similar to a Victoria Monet or Money Long, where you have this solo career really waiting to burst at the seams. But for the longest, it doesn't hit in the same way. The songs you write for other artists do, but for yourself, it doesn't really hit. Victoria Monet started out in a group and then really delved into her solo career, didn't see as much success, started writing. Money Long had her own solo career as Priscilla Renee, as some of you guys may or may not know. And then she really went back into songwriter mode and now is really trying to take that solo career and take it to the moon. You know what I mean? So very similar story. As we know, her working relationship with Chris Brown spanned outside of her just being an artist for him and on his imprint. She wrote a lot of his work.
The time they were working on Chris's Fame and Fortune project.
Do you remember like the specifically with 3 times, like what's the story?
And Chris was like, all right, he's like, well, you can work on the second verse while we're going. I was like, okay. And then, so then the song goes off. He goes, all right, bet, Brian, load me up. Ooh. And he goes in and he just cuts the second verse. He didn't change.
Oh, he liked it.
He didn't change anything.
Wow.
He liked it. I get the news that he's making it his first single, and it happened to be my first placement.
She helped write songs like Next to You, which ended up featuring Justin Bieber, The Bed, Oh My Love on his Fame album in 2011. She's also laid down a lot of background vocals for him through the years. So if you ever hear a female voice on some of his tracks, chances are they are Sevyn Streeter. For example, She Ain't You with Chris Brown. She is the background vocals. Although she's not credited in the song, like as a featured artist, those are her vocals. She also wrote more songs for Chris like Strip, Fine China, and X. That is just the tip of the iceberg. She says her time with Chris was really where she developed those writing chops. And in 2011, she wrote songs for Kelly Rowland on her album. She also has written for Brandy, Alicia Keys, Fantasia, Tamar Braxton. Her most recent credits also consist of some of the new R&B girlies. Yes, making her imprint there. She wrote Caught Up in AAA for Flow on their debut album in 2024. And she also wrote Distance on Normani's debut album. So she's also had her hand recently with some of the new class of artists today. But it's safe to say that songwriting has given Sevyn a nice coin over the years. Okay, she's been getting paid, but you also get publishing checks. And that is very important. It is a great way to sustain yourself in the median of everything. So that's why the singers who also write their own songs, you're going to make the most money that way. So Sevyn was able to see both sides of that reality. And somewhere along the way, she really gained recognition and received the respect from an icon, the legend, Stevie Wonder.
Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to present an incredible singer-songwriter, Sevyn Streeter!
So despite what people may or may not know or want to say, she was absolutely making her impact in the industry one way or another, whether it was front facing or whether it was her behind the scenes in these writing sessions, in these rooms, shopping these songs to labels and giving them to artists and launching their careers. She has made her impact. So let's put some respect on her name in that sense. This is the interesting story of the singer-songwriter. Having a desire to write and potentially sing these songs yourself, but also kind of having to maybe give it away because it's maybe more fitting for another artist. For example, as we mentioned in Jordan Sparks' video, Sevyn Streeter was on the writing team for Ariana Grande's hit single, debut single, The Way, in 2013. This, I cannot stress enough, was the song that launched Ariana's career into the stratosphere. This is what made Ariana Ariana. And this was a song that both Sevyn and Jordan had the desire to sing. Potentially. Like both of them low-key, high-key wanted the song. Sevyn wanted the song at one point. But Sevyn did reveal in a Breakfast Club interview that she didn't think the track would have performed as well if she sang it. And she doesn't regret by any means giving it to Ariana because the publishing check was very nice.
As a writer, do you feel like you've given away a song that could have been a hit for you? A song that became a hit that you like, damn, I shouldn't have gave that away.
Well, I don't feel like I shouldn't have gave it away because I still got my coin. But Ariana Grande's The Way. That was a really, really, really big record.
However, you could argue that she would have sounded good singing it.
Harmony Samuels, myself, A-Rod, and Jordan Sparks had a session for Jordan. At the time, we thought that it was going to go on Jordan, and got the call. And I remember Harmony called me. He was like, hey, so remember the song The Way? I was like, yeah. He was like, so this girl from Nickelodeon named Ariana, they want it for her. She's going to cut it. I was like, oh, yeah. He was like, yeah, she's going to cut it. And I was like, okay. I said, she can sing though, right? He was like, no, she can sing. I said, okay. And then I don't know when or how I heard the record, but when I heard that goddamn record, I was like, oh, she can sing.
Right.
Got it. Like,
Right.
shout out Ariana, because like You did that, girl.
Because of the confines that the industry has made on genres, what you look like, what is expected of you, what is looked at as an anomaly in one group is just the everyday thing for the other. So you're not going to get the same shine if you sing a song like this versus an Ariana Grande.
It wouldn't have been as big for you though, because you're black.
You know what? I won't even disagree with that. Truth be told, like that's you want to open up. That's a whole other conversation because I definitely feel like certain records are bigger on certain artists because they are white. If I would have put that song out, you know, would they have played it on, you know, big pop stations? Probably not. Honestly, it's the hardest decision to make when you have to decide between making your money and your livelihood, you know what I mean? Or keeping a record because you know it's amazing and it'll do well for you in terms of an artist. That's the hardest decision I have to make.
Do you think the song would have been as big if Sevyn sang it? Like, was the song just that good? Or do you think that it went to the right person?
I love the way. Say, baby, I love the way. Oh, I love the way.
But Sevyn absolutely had a part in Ariana's career trajectory. And that's why it's so important to respect and honor the Black artists who are behind these songs and these singles. We gotta respect the origin, the source, the sauce. So next, we are gonna talk about the scandals. The scandals. This is a great time to take a little bathroom break, get a snack, because we have some things to get into. Let's talk about the national anthem scandal. Back in October 2016, Sevyn made the media cycle on a national scale for the first time. On October 26, 2016, she was set to perform the national anthem at the Philadelphia 76ers season opener. It's basketball, y'all. However, the organization was not happy with her attire. It read, "We matter." So they canceled her performance just minutes before because she refused to change.
The 76ers game to sing the national anthem, and the organization is telling me that I can't because I'm wearing a "We Matter" jersey.
However, to stay balanced, according to a report by CBS Philly, the contract that she signed allegedly did prohibit political statements, and "We Matter" at the time was considered a political statement. America. I also just really don't understand why the 76ers were dancing around that. Like, they couldn't just come out and say the contract. They were trying to use this fluffy language to mask why they cut her. So Sevyn stood firm. She said, quote, "You want me to sing about the land of the free, but you don't want me to speak freely." That's a bar. Exactly. But many of you guys may remember this was in the wake of a lot of the kneeling protests in sports and Black Lives Matter movement. And it was also in the wake of the quarterback, Colin Kaepernick, kneeling, getting in trouble with the NFL. Many people were using sports games to make their statement and make their point, which I don't see a problem with. I don't. It was kind of shocking for people because the NBA at this time, comparison to their other league counterpart, the NFL, the NBA was a bit more open in allowing their players and allowing people within the organization to speak on these things more openly. People were outraged and condemned the organization for canceling Sevyn's performance. And it did make sports news. It made ESPN. She was getting interviewed. It was a pretty big deal at the time. The organization would then walk back their decision and made a public statement saying, quote, "We are sorry that this happened. And after receiving feedback from our players, basketball operations staff, and ownership group, we believe that the wrong decision was made and Sevyn should have been welcome to sing." So they did retract that, and they even offered her to come back and perform again. So she did come back and sing the national anthem with her "We Matter" shirt on, because exactly, and she performed the anthem in December of 2016.
I'm singing the anthem tonight. I'm wearing my "We Matter" jersey.
So you are going to wear that "We Matter" jersey. What is that going to mean to put that on and then sing?
Me saying "We Matter" and me singing the anthem, the two are they don't conflict. There's no conflict in the two for me. You know, I love my country. I love it so much that you only when you love something that much, you only just want it to be better. You want it to be better, and that's really what "We Matters" means to me.
Essentially another entry to the time period where many athletes and Black artists and artists were using their platforms to speak on these issues. Now, next in our scandals, we have to talk about Chris Brown. We have to talk about this man. We got to talk about it. So her brand has been heavily intertwined with Chris Brown. Let's be real. Her Chris Brown feature made "It Won't Stop" a smash success. Her songs with Chris Brown are her most known songs. Okay, so I'm not going to sit up here and act like she has not benefited in any way from that relationship. But I'm not going to be naive to how I do think, in a way, that her relationship with him, in the long run, may have stunted her growth. Now, we already talked about this a little bit with my video, "The R&B Girls Are Under a Spell." where we talked about Chris Brown collab, his features, and how it can be somewhat of a scarlet letter for some artists and some not so much. And in that video, I kind of brushed past Sevyn Streeter. I didn't talk about her much, but doing research for this video, I do think that this has alienated some audiences that maybe she didn't intend to, that could have stuck around. I wonder if this counted her out for many Black female listeners. If you are one of those people who were perturbed or put off by her relationship with Chris, comment down below. I'm kind of curious to see where you stand on that. But she has been asked about her working relationship with Chris over the years, actually quite often. An April 2015 article called Sevyn Streeter on How a Feminist Can Befriend Chris Brown. They got her for that one. Ouch. Ouch. But an honest question. She was candidly asked by the journalist why she continues to work with him. And she admitted that her previous label and team, when she was with Rich Girl, told her that it would not be the best look. And during that time, she responded by saying, quote, "To hell with you, because at the end of the day, I'm not going to judge somebody by what I read in a magazine or see on TV or their circumstance. Let me gather and gain my own opinions and views according to my interaction with him. And thank God I did for my own relationship with him, because he's just like you and me." But people plastered all of the mistakes we made over every news station, every mistake you've ever made 24 hours a day. How would you feel about that? Getting to know him was the best decision I've ever made in my life. My friendship with Chris is amazing. He's my mentor, he's my friend, and he's no different from me. Like, girl, it's your choice, okay? And I've said this in my other video. If you want to know how I feel about that, go check it out. It's your choice. Boom. Okay. But the way that these ladies defend his honor, the passion, y'all, the passion, is so interesting to me. The journalist then further poked, asking how she works with him as a woman, flat out. And when she was asked explicitly, "Do you just put the domestic violence thing aside?" she said, quote, "Yeah." Retracted a little bit, said not that it was just put aside, the whole situation was real. I just chose to develop my own relationship and my own opinions and not be swayed by anything else. And in a Breakfast Club interview, she was asked by Charlamagne directly if she was concerned with being associated with him because he was continuously still getting into trouble. And her mom even chimed in, Sevyn's mom chimed in and said, no, he's never done anything to her.
When you see Chris Brown do his antics and stuff, do you ever worry about Sevyn being signed to him?
Absolutely not. Because Chris in his personal life and the things that he has experienced never affected her. He's always shown her the utmost respect.
It's the same thing I just said. You guys already know how that is. People are very dismissive of DV allegations, point blank period. And as long as it doesn't happen to them, they don't give a They don't. They don't. And I kind of just wish, if I'm being honest, we know that Chris Brown's a human. We know that. He's a person. But I already kind of spoke about it. There's been a repeated pattern or behavior. Honestly, she got very close to saying it, but just say that you really don't give a Just say you don't care. And I would honestly kind of respect your honesty a lot more than trying to go in loops. It's just be honest. Y'all be trying to do the whole, he like you and me. Oh, I make mistakes too. Just say that you don't care. Just say you don't care and let's move on with it. So she's had to bear the consequences of those opinions on her. What would have been interviews that were supposed to be focused on Sevyn, we've seen this be an issue with a lot of artists. Now a lot of her interviews were constantly asking about Chris Brown, why she works with him, their relationship. As much as her songs with him, like It Won't Stop, Don't Kill the Fun, have provided her a lot of success, the most solo success that she's seen, in the long run, I don't really think that relationship has done wonders for her solo career. Maybe songwriting, sure, because it really put her foot in the door. But this could perhaps be another example of how a Chris Brown cosign might not do a lot for your career optics-wise in the long run, because he would also still continue to get in trouble. At one point, his support for her did slow down, and that was something she was frequently asked about.
Are you still signed to Chris Brown?
Yeah.
Still
I am.
Is he still involved with your process? And
yeah, I mean,
not as much.
Is he going to bring you on tour? I'm not sure.
He had a lot of other legal issues going on to where he couldn't fully focus on her. And it was also rumored that they might have even fallen out for some time.
Was there ever a period of we're not sure if we cool? Or I mean, I think that there was a period of time where we weren't we didn't speak as much, but I don't ever take things like that to heart. People got their lives they dealing with.
In one interview, she didn't even know if she was signed to him or not anymore.
Okay, are you still signed to Chris Brown?
I believe I am. Honestly, I need to check and see, but I think that I am still signed to him.
We only released one album.
Yeah, like, all the way honest and transparent. I love him to death. We haven't worked together in a very long time, and I hate that that's the case. But
Nothing about Chris Brown that says executive, and that's not a diss. He just don't seem like he's all the way together to be running other people's careers.
I will say this in terms of my career and his input in my career, he's been very instrumental.
It just seemed a little unorganized, and at some point it didn't really seem to benefit her that much anymore. And if anything, maybe even more of a stain, perhaps. What do you guys think? Her next scandal we got to talk about. A questionable thought, a questionable view, questionable opinion. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because this did make the news cycle. Okay, I'm not trying to demonize her, but this is just something that did come up when I was researching her. Sevyn was caught in another controversy after a Breakfast Club interview in 2015. She went to this interview to promote her single with Chris Brown, Don't Kill the Fun. And she said, I'm going to say this in the most PG way I can for YouTube purposes, saying that you should never turn down grown-up time with your partner, if you know what I mean. She said, quote, I think it's your job as a woman or a man to. I don't think you should ever say no. I'm talking about if you're tired or someone's like, I'm tired. No, because at the end of the day, you took that person off of the market. They can't go and be with someone else because they're with you. So you don't ever say no. Yeah. When you are in a relationship, you still have bodily autonomy. That is first and foremost. And I don't think I overly need to elaborate on why this is a problematic statement. I also am not sure how much I can because of YouTube guidelines, so I want to toe a very fine line, but that's a more than questionable statement. Please do not think that this is law. Now, she would go on to clarify in other interviews because people asked her about it, that it goes both ways, and she wanted to make it clear that there was no double standards, that men and women. In the quote, she said both men and women, so I don't know where that came from, but regardless if it's man or woman, it does not matter. Y'all could say I'm being sensitive or woke. I know what she was trying to say, but I don't think that's an idea that should ever be perpetuated. A lot of it, she said, was due to like really wanting to cater to somebody, and that is a Southern kind of ideal. And she said some other things that I think some people kind of relationship-wise side-eyed.
I always said this, that once I'm married, I always said that I would not leave my husband if I found out that he cheated one time. You know what I mean? It don't mean that I'm not going to put him through hell and high water and it's going to be, listen here, but I wouldn't leave my husband.
That is something that she talks about a lot in her interviews and is inspired by. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. Let's keep it PG in the comments, but that made me stop in my tracks. And lastly, dating. We're going to just talk very briefly about her relationship. For those of you guys who don't know, she did date the rapper B.O.B. from around 2014 to 2015. Y'all may remember B.O.B. You should, from songs like Airplanes featuring Hayley Williams and his #1 hit, Nothing on You featuring Bruno Mars, that released in 2009. I know they were on the same label. They had been friends for a while, acquaintances. They even have a song together on her project. So that blossomed into a relationship, I'm sure, very naturally. They did a lot of press tours. They frequented questions about him. It absolutely, I think, did help kind of boost their PR a little bit. But I will say this, things did somewhat blow up on social media when B.O.B. posted pictures with another woman who was not Sevyn, quite quickly, I believe, after their breakup. People were not also fully aware of their situation behind the scenes. A lot of people felt like their relationship seemed healthy. They idealized it. They were kind of couple goals. So a lot of people felt like him posting another woman was disrespectful. The woman posted was then targeted by fans who said that she was the reason that they broke up. Okay, so people were starting to harass the girl. A friend of this lady would come out and claim that B.O.B. called that woman and asked her to pretend like they were dating so blogs would pick up the story. That it was like a whole PR publicity stunt. I don't know the man. I really don't know much about B.O.B. So I don't know his character. But Hollywood, it's not, I wouldn't put it past somebody. Celebrities do shit like that all the time. And I think a lot of this playing out at the time, like 2015, 2016, this was around the time that Sevyn really started to struggle with her mental health. I'm sure this contributed to a lot of that, them breaking up. Her career was kind of in limbo a little bit. She had a lot of family issues going on. And also, when I was looking at interviews and things like that of her, there were people very harsh about her looks. Like, she wears too much makeup and this and that. Like, I just could imagine it was a lot going on at that time. And I know that the breakup did not help. So guys, that was our scandal section. Generally speaking though, I think she's kind of stayed out of trouble. Like, she's kind of stayed out the way for as long as she's been in the industry. I think a lot could have gone worse. And to round out this video, we are going to talk about where she is now. We're going to kind of pick up from the story where we left off. So she took a brief break in the grand scheme of things from heavily releasing solo music after her single What You Say in 2019. No projects like she had been doing the previous years. No EP, no albums. In September 2020, a few months after the pandemic had been like officially announced, she released a single called Hit Me Up and another single featuring Davido called Kisses, both of which would be scrapped from Sevyn's second studio album, Drunken Words, Sober Thoughts. In February 2021, she released its official lead single, Guilty, featuring Chris Brown and A$AP Ferg. Guilty, the more that we keep thinking. Again, this was their first collaboration in a very long time, as her and Chris had kind of separated and I guess found their way back. The album was released in September 2021, and it appears she did have a label change. While all of her other projects were released by Atlantic and CBE, Chris's imprint, this album was released by T Street. T Street, I'm assuming, might have been her own label or tied to somebody personal, as she's the only artist that is listed on their roster. And she did confirm that she did go independent in a Breakfast Club interview in 2021.
Sevyn is independent.
Yes.
So you're independent now.
I am.
You got tired of Atlantic?
No, listen here, it's not a tired of them. I love them. They were amazing. I learned a lot of shit, but I love being independent.
I really like this album. I really did. This was when I had re-tapped into Sevyn. I kind of forgot about her for some years. So I was like, okay, she's back. Slept on a little bit. Like, I don't think a lot of people were talking about it. Not by anybody's fault. She has one of her best songs on there, Taboo. Again, taking a stab at this old school R&B sound. It's very 80s-esque, very dreamy. Whatever you want to do. She had songs like Nasty Girl, Feel Away, Liquid Courage, No Apologies is a bop. That was featured on the Deluxe in February 2022. She went on to release other singles throughout the years. She released a single called Thank You in 2023. That was a very Aaliyah-esque early 2000s inspired vibe. It's very pretty. Her vocals are very soft, very light. And speaking of Aaliyah, Aaliyah is actually one of Sevyn's greatest vocal and musical inspirations. So Sevyn was able to visit DSA back in 2013. That is Aaliyah's high school. Detroit's is legends only. Let's make that very, very clear. Her last two single releases, which were 2024, have been both collabs, one with Eric Bellinger and another with Elijah Blake. She also did perform the national anthem at a Tampa Bay Buccaneers game in December 2024. And in biggest news, Sevyn also landed a spot on Netflix's new show, Hitmakers. And when I mean new, guys, it is very, very new. It released on July 24th, 2025, and it follows a group of Hollywood songwriters, reputable songwriters in the industry who have written bona fide hits.
These camps can make or break a career. If you don't write a hit, you won't be invited back.
We can be all friends, but I want to win.
And they create demos and songs working together for artists like John Legend, Shabuzi, Usher, and Lisa. And Sevyn is featured along other very talented songwriters like Nova Wave, Tommy Brown, you name it, Harv, all of these people. I actually got the chance to watch it. I decided to watch it in preparation for this video. And when I tell y'all, it was good. It was very interesting. If you are interested in the behind the scenes process, go check it out. Sevyn really pushed her pen, and I don't want to spoil anything. So if you don't want it spoiled, I'm going to give you 5 seconds to fast forward. 5 seconds. But when it came to these artists picking songs and wanting to cut the record, 7 songs were chosen for multiple artists. Several songs that she helped write were chosen. So she was pushing that pen, don't play with her. In a way, I think it's so powerful. I think it's great that she joined a project like this. I think it's great for her PR. Songwriters are often seen as backseat players when they're really helping craft whole careers, craft whole sounds. So it's cool for me to see Sevyn in this environment, getting recognition for that and being given the platform to shine. The show also did kind of delve into a little bit of drama as well. So you kind of got to see her personality and how she maneuvers certain situations. But definitely go check it out. This was very coincidental. I've been wanting to do Sevyn Streeter, and I had a lot of you guys recommend her. And I'm like, damn, she's also in a new show and it just dropped. So I was like, I gotta do the video now. I also noticed that she deleted all Instagram posts except for the ones pertaining to the new show. So I wonder if she's putting ample focus back into her songwriting career moving forward and using this to serve as a fresh start. As you know, if this show does well, a lot of people will be introduced to her for the very first time. Maybe she should pop out with a new era.
Too much. I just did a new record deal. And so we're excited about that. 3 singles lined up. I have my EP is already done. Before the leaves turn brown, you'll have a new Sevyn project.
Wow.
Maybe that would make a lot of sense right now with the visibility that she might gain from this. I do think it's possible to regain attention. I do like Sevyn's music, but if she decides to songwrite for the rest of her life and the rest of her industry career, that's something that she can continue to do. I support that. She writes great songs. I think she's a great writer. Thank you guys so much for watching. That is what happened to Sevyn Streeter she has had in the industry. I think it's so inspiring that she started in this industry when she was like 14 and she is still making waves behind the scenes as a songwriter and still pursuing her passion. Let me know what you guys think down below. Comment down below, who do you want me to check out next? I do see your comments. I have a whole list. And I will be getting to some of those groups, don't you worry, but I am a one-woman show. I film myself, I write my scripts, edit all of my videos. So it's a one-woman band. It's a one-woman show over here. So I am always trying to give you quality, and I'm not going to do a video if I don't think I can do it justice. So that is coming. Thank you so much for watching. Hit that subscribe button down below, and I will see you in my next video.